Everyone. Welcome to our April Details University Masterclass. And I'm really excited to introduce you to my new friend, Franceska McCaughan of the Hotel Florist. And we met a few months back, and I thought, you are going to be a perfect guest. So would you like to do this class? And Franceska obliged. So thank you for joining us this month, Franceska. Welcome to Details.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to have just a fun conversation today.
Yeah, well, I'm really interested in what you're doing at the Hotel Florist, and you're basically teaching florists how all over the world on how to garner more business and add this extra revenue item to their book of tools, like of what they do and the services they offer. And I was really inspired by your background. Like you have been all over the world and worked in the hotel scene for a very long time. So why don't you give us just a short introduction to who you are, and then we'll jump in with questions. And if you guys are listening and have any questions, you can always put them in the chat. We would love that. And otherwise, we've got 30 questions for Franceska, so we're going to keep her really busy. But yeah, welcome, Franceska. Please tell us more about you.
Yeah, so a little bit about me is I actually went and got a degree in hotel and restaurant management, and I thought that my career and I would climb the corporate ladder in the hospitality industry. And in 2012, I was presented with an opportunity to branch out and go into more of the entrepreneurial space. And I'll save you kind of all those details, but long story short, in 2015, I found myself in the floral space and I opened a floral design company, and I was doing what I feel like every florist is taught how to do, like go after weddings. It was either like be a wedding florist, be a retail florist, or do funerals. Like I felt like those were the three avenues. And I really wanted it to work because I loved flowers and I really wanted to figure out how to make, money with doing flowers.
Yeah.
And I was just getting frustrated, like year after year, feeling like I was chasing brides, feeling like I was trying to pay my rent through trying to book weddings, and it was just really stressful for me. So in 2017, I landed my first hotel client, and I decided that even though I felt like the black sheep in the floral industry because I didn't really want to be a wedding florist, I was like somehow like, how could I take my hotel experience and mix it with my floral business and just focus on hotels? But the moment that I got that first hotel client, it all clicked for me. It was like reoccurring revenue. All of a sudden I felt like I could breathe again. I could hire a team. And then if I wanted to do weddings and events, I called them like the cherry on top, but it no longer came from this place of like, oh my gosh, I have to land this client. It came from this place of like, oh my gosh, I would love to work with this client. And that's two completely different energies, especially as you're like building your business. So that was really the beginning of it. So 2017, I landed my first hotel client. And from there, I started working with multiple hotel clients. I started getting artists in residencies, meaning like I would live and work in a hotel. I landed Tiffany & Co. as their Texas State florist, Chanel. Like I started building up all this, what I like to call brand equity in my business. And it was all because I just really prioritized creating consistent income. And that is like what I live and breathe to this day.
Nice. And you've traveled all over the world. I think I saw you've been doing things for royalty. You've been in Dubai. You're based in Texas, and I think you're in a hotel right now. So
Yeah.
you're living up to your brand name, the Hotel Florist. Yeah, right.
I've been to over 50 countries. Like travel is something that's really big for me. I've been an expat. I've lived in the Middle East. I am currently living in Europe right now. I'm visiting the US. But for
Okay.
me, it's like freedom is so important, whether it's financial freedom, freedom of design, time freedom, that I was also like, how do I create a business that I am wildly passionate about, but also gives me that freedom? And there was a time that I felt like I had built myself a golden cage. That was 2019, so it was a couple years later. And again, like I learned and I figured out how could I take my business from a 6 days a week business to a 2 days a week, and how do I scale and how do I automate it and how do I build a team so that I feel like I have my life back. So again, there's a few other things we don't talk about in the floral world. We don't talk about consistent income. We don't talk about what to do when we're done with our business, like AKA how to sell and how to build something that is actually an asset that you can sell. And the third thing is like, how do we build something that supports our life? Not that we are an employee of, but like actually something that supports what where we're going next, and our
Yeah.
dreams and our family and our time. So these are kind of like the three pillars I like to focus on, because these are the three areas that I really struggled with and that I found a solution for.
Yeah, I always remember having that future date, and I was like, well, I'm beholden to this job because I have this client like 2 years into the future. So I definitely know when you have that create that golden cage, right? And so how did you go about because I love the idea of like getting that consistent income. Of course, we preach that here, but how did you go about getting that first hotel client? Because I think that hotel work is can be intimidating for a lot of especially newer florists.
For sure. I think, 80% of it, I tell my clients all the time, is mindset, 20% is skill. But we get really stuck on the fact about how, like, I've never worked with a hotel, or I don't have a team, or I don't know how to price. And so we let that be our story, and we kind of like stay stuck. And that's why I say like 80% of it is a mindset. So
Mm.
I remember my first hotel client, it took me a year to land this client. Now I've had, florists come into my world and they've landed their first hotel client within a week. So I don't want my story, you think that that's like the benchmark, because I just like sharing my experience. But what it
Yeah.
taught me was the value of a relationship, the value of perseverance, the value of determination. And within a year, I remember sitting in front of the owner, and it went on for a year. First of all, I was 8,500 miles away. So I was bidding on a hotel account that I didn't even live in that
Oh,
city, but I knew I was moving. They went through two GMs. Like, it was just how it needed to unfold. But I remember sitting in front of that owner, and we didn't connect on the fact that I was a hotel florist, because honestly, I wasn't. I had never worked for hotels before. I knew how to do weddings. I knew how to do events. I was living in Dubai at the time, so I could speak to that. But I had a hospitality background. And again, like, when people come into my world, I'm like, we will find the one thing you can speak to with the hotels that you already have experience in, whether it's customer service, whether it's that you're detail oriented, whether that you've dealt with high profile clients. Like, all of that stuff matters, if not more than I'm a hotel florist, because like with all things, we start from scratch. So for me, landing that first hotel client, it was a 6-month contract. And I essentially said, look, let me come in. I usually do only annual contracts, but in this case, because I would really like to partner with you, and I understand you have hesitations because they had been burned in the past, I would love to just show you what I can do for 6 months, and this is how it works, and this is how much I charge. And it's honestly just being able to have the confidence to go in, speak to the decision maker, and be able to build a relationship with them while also listening to what it is that they actually need. And that's why, another thing, you'll never hear me talk about how to sell yourself, because, vendors sell themselves. But as a hotel florist, you are an extension of their team. So it's like, how do you actually create that know, like, trust in the relationship? And so that is how I ultimately landed my first hotel client, with a 6-month contract. And I went on for 6 years in-house.
wow. So when you made this like 6-month contract, did you say, hey, we're going to have X amount of dollars that we anticipate spending on the spend, and these are some ideas? Or how did you like present them with like that initial idea?
So coming from the hotel industry, and especially coming from more of the corporate side and the ownership side, I know that every hotel has a budget, and every hotel will finalize an annual budget usually in September of the previous year. So if I'm sitting in front of an owner or a GM in March, I know that they have a budget. Like, they literally have a line item that says like flowers and botanical, or whatever they've named it. There is a budget, because that budget had to be approved by ownership.
Mhm.
So I will ask them, like, you've shown me the scope of work. You've shown me that you need 21 elevator banks and 9 cocktail tables, and you want a big install at the front desk, and roses in in-room dining. Like, what is the budget for this? Like, you can ask that. It's like if you went car shopping, you can ask, like, what is the price of this vehicle? Now, what I find hotels love to do, because they like to shop, they like to price, just like we all do. I mean, how many times have we
Absolutely.
been on a website and been like, oh, let me see if I can find a coupon for this, or let me see if I can find a sale on this? Like, they're doing the same thing. And what happens is we make it mean something about us, but it's not about us. It's just they're trying to make sure they're getting the best value. And so I will ask, like, what is the budget for this scope? If you find that a potential hotel client will say, oh, I don't really know, then it's like, great. Are we talking about $15,000 a month? Are we talking about $5,000 a month? Like you can
Mm.
start doing this, like, let me give you a ballpark and you can gauge. If you say 15,000, they're like, oh no, absolutely not. Then you're like, okay, so we're closer to like the 5,000 mark. Oh, I'm not really sure. Do you think it's more like 1,000? Oh no, it's definitely not that. They have a number in mind, and it's been approved. And so when it comes to pricing, we're never there as florists to guess. We're there as florists to ask. And if they don't know, we need to get some sort of ballpark. Otherwise, we're just shooting in the dark and it's a waste of time.
Yeah. How would you say that you like you have a relationship maybe with the the banquet manager, but who is the person that ultimately is deciding like on a big, is it the general manager at the hotel?
It's going to be the general manager. This general
Okay.
manager is either signing your checks or he's signing off on getting your checks signed. So, let's take it back to seventh grade biology class. Like I still remember sitting and seeing this phrase, like shoot for the moon, worst case you'll
Yeah.
land among the stars. And of
Yeah.
course, being the overachiever that I am, I'm like, no, I would just, I would just land on the moon. So that's why I always tell my clients, like you speak to the GM, like the GM is the one who's going to put you in front of the owners, who's going to vet for you, who's going to make sure that you're getting paid. And I would say someone like a banquet manager, though you have a relationship with them, and I'm not diminishing that at all. They are your
Mhm.
gatekeeper. They don't really have anything to say for your contract or who you're speaking to. They can put you potentially in front of the right people, and you never want to like burn your bridge with your gatekeeper. And again, inside like one of my programs, I talk about exactly how to make the gatekeeper feel very like seen and heard and
Yeah.
appreciated and loved, because like their main goal in their life is to climb up the corporate ladder, and your
Mm.
main goal in your life and your business is to land this corporate client. So bottom line is you always need to be speaking to the general manager because they are the ultimate decision maker.
Yeah. Did you find that you were often like sending like weekly flowers or something to the general manager to like get in the door there? Like, because a lot of times they're super busy. Like they're like, who is this florist who's knocking on my door? Like, how did you make those first like intros there?
I am not a fan of free flowers, and I laugh
Yeah.
because this is like, I feel like the biggest
Leftovers.
myth.
Yeah.
So I'm so happy I get to like be a myth buster. First of all, energetically, when was the last time you received something for free, knowing that there was an expectation attached to it and like genuinely enjoyed that experience? Probably never, right? There's a
Mm.
reason why we like bypass the kiosks at the mall who wants to like rub lotion on our
Yeah.
hands or show us a new straightener
I,
for free. It's like, what do you want from me? So first of all, I'm totally against that. Second of all, you never know what you're providing, if it's even in line with what they're looking for. So you could potentially be shooting yourself in the foot. And this actually happened to me with Four Seasons. Like I had chief concierge so confident, saying they want this and they want this. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, this is so exciting. And again, this is why I'm so passionate about what I'm teaching, because I have lived through real life experience. And I remember I showed up with all the arrangements for the GM to look at for free. And I will never forget, he literally passed by, glanced at it, walked off. I didn't get the time of day, after putting so much thought and love and story and like everything behind this. And I was told in the end, I didn't get selected because he was looking for an orchid bloom to be placed in a bowl. Well, honestly, a blind person could do that. And if I knew that, like I could have totally done that, but I didn't know that. I was literally going off of what someone told me, and I was being told to provide it for free. And that's when I decided I'm not doing that anymore. So I am not a fan of free flowers. I think, first of all, it can really jeopardize your opportunity because you're kind of, again, shooting in the dark about what they want to see, and you're not actually giving yourself a fair shot. And the second thing is like, nobody likes to receive something for free with expectations attached to it. So
mm.
giving things for free is not required to land a hotel client.
Okay. Well, I probably would have started there. So that was like my first like faux pas. How do you feel about like florists that might think I'm not really in a luxury market? Like we do day-to-day floristry and weddings and events at some nice venues, but these are not venues that regularly have flowers maybe in their reception area. So is there a way that you can break in and incentivize that hotel or venue to like want this service?
Yes. Yes and no. So I'm also very clear with like majority of 5-star and 4-star hotels are looking for flowers. And it's because they need to have fresh cut florals inside their lobbies because it supports their brand standards. For example, like let's say we all know Lululemon. Like we know if we buy a pair of Lululemons, there's going to be a logo on there because that supports their brand standards. So I want you to think of the same as like a hotel. So for example, like a JW, they have to have fresh cut florals in their lobby. It's part of the JW standard. Um,
Mm.
so I always say, like, if you're in a market, go to Kayak, go and search 4 and 5 star hotels in your area that you're willing to drive to, whether that's 30 minutes, an hour radius, like whatever feels good to you. Those are
Mhm.
your top clients that you're going to go after. Now, that's not to say that small boutique hotels aren't investing in fresh cut florals or botanicals. I've seen plenty of really cute 3-star, very authentic, locally owned hotels that are looking for florists to help them with lobby flowers or with like plants in their lobby. That's totally an option as well. The other thing I want to say is that you can never go wrong creating a relationship with your director of sales and marketing in any hotel in any area that you're in, because the director of sales and marketing, I always say, is like the fun person on the management team. Like they're always looking for ways to like activate their space, activate their events. So even if you start selling like flower bars to them, around the holidays, like Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, Christmas, where maybe they're prepaying or maybe they're buying in advance and getting a deal, but you're getting great cash flow in. Like that is a way that you can monetize the hospitality industry, even in smaller cities. I've had plenty of flower farmers come into our world, and even though they don't have luxury hotels in their market because they're in smaller cities, they've been able to take the information I provided. They've been able to go to their smaller businesses, say like a custom. There was one florist who approached like a custom menswear company and said, "Hey, how would you like it if you had an arrangement every week in your lobby?" And they're like, "That would be amazing," because we also forget that the impact. This isn't a wedding where we're just trying to get one and done. Your flowers that you're putting in corporate spaces are adding value to the price that the corporation is charging for their client. It's adding value to the client experience that they're having. So it's, you really can take this information, and I focus on hotels specifically because that is my niche and my background, but you can apply this information across all sectors, luxury retail, even like legal firms, high-end retail,
Yeah.
spas, country club, restaurants, hotels. I mean, anything that has to do with hospitality. We're getting into the yachting industry
Yes.
now, getting into interior design now.
Mm.
It all applies.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And I especially love to see our wedding florists, especially diversify their streams of revenue. That's a way during slow seasons just to kind of keep that income coming in. So I think that the flower bars, like that's huge. I've seen like Louis Vuitton have these like floral arrangements coming through. And it's just a great way to also create goodwill, I think, with your customer base. And if they feel that extra something special, I'm sure that there's ways that you teach branding or different things that they can incorporate into their playbook of sorts to like
Yeah.
build up a book of business.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, luxury brands are always looking for their equal. And so this is why, one of the things I teach is like identity. Like, what is your identity online? Because I don't know how many times, and I'm sure you've experienced this. You've gone online, you've gone on Instagram and you're scrolling. Everyone looks the same. Everyone's
Yeah.
doing the same trend, using the same music because we're so desperate to be like discovered that we're so scared to actually tap into like what makes us unique. And I remember, this took me a few years to get the courage to do, but I finally decided like we're a very modern brand. We're very, simple. We're very like cutting edge. And I just owned that, whether it was like the fonts or the colors. And that's when I really noticed like we started attracting like-minded companies. Like if you look at the brand of Chanel, I don't know how much more basic you can get than black and white,
Yeah.
but we have a standard, we have a quality standard, we speak to our standard. And so these luxury brands, like they really are looking for consistency. They're looking for luxury. They're looking for detail. And they're really looking to feel like supported and valued. So it's not that we need to compromise our values as florists, where it's kind of like, yeah, anything goes. It's more so like being upfront with like, how do you get to work with us? What we will provide, what you can expect. And again, going back to the 80% confidence, 20% skill set, it really is like deciding how your business gets to work for you and who are the clients that you're calling in that are an energetic match for that.
Yeah, I love that. Is there a specific type of floral or botanical that you think works best in the luxury like hotel market? Like, is there something that you find is just like a great money maker, so it is like a great profitable flower, or something that is just like time tested and true, like everybody wants it?
I feel like, you know, if I had to pick one out of the hundreds that we would have an option of, I feel like you could never go wrong with an orchid. There are so many
Yeah,
different ways that you can utilize an orchid. You could literally have like a potted orchid, like, hi, I'm a basic potted orchid.
yeah.
And you could have a subscription around potted orchids. Like, I
Mhm.
get replaced every quarter, you know, and you could go to all your local restaurants and you could be the orchid supplier, for
Yeah.
example. You could take orchids and you can literally cut them out of the pot. And now you just have a stem of beautiful orchids.
Mhm.
Now you put those stems in clear glass vases and it looks like everything's floating and it feels very luxurious because we, again, equate luxury high end with orchids. You know, it's not the same as a carnation. You could take an orchid bloom and literally put it in a little bubble bowl and have it floating in water. You know, there's something so delicate, so feminine, so luxurious about an orchid that I feel like however you design with one, you can never go wrong with it.
Yeah. How often are you going back and refreshing these arrangements? And do you work that into the contract? Like, hey, we're going to check on these bouquets every 3 days and send a team. Like, how
I love
systematic
you
did
asked
you?
this question because I feel like this is a I'm going to say a personal preference. So I'm going to give a little context. When I first started working with hotels, I was terrified that my flowers would die. So I literally showed up every single day to get like, you know,
Mhm.
reassurance for my human that everything was going to be fine. And it probably took me about a year to really trust myself, to really trust the fact that I knew what I was doing, that my flowers were going to be okay. What a lot of florists do is they will charge extra for you know, going in and refreshing or for maintenance. And when I entered a new market, because remember, I was in the Middle East when I was bidding on stuff in the US, and I knew the US had two things that I really didn't have. One, it had a really competitive wedding floristry community in my city. I live in at the time, I was going to the fourth largest US city. And I was like, I'm not looking to compete with wedding florists. Like, that doesn't interest me. The second thing is that I just didn't have a lot of experience. So
Mhm.
coming from the Middle East, where like negotiation, and I want to bring in countries because we do have a very international spread amongst the hotel florists. Like I want to say we have over 20 countries represented at this point. Um,
Okay.
came from a country that prided themselves on negotiation. Like if you're in the Middle East, you're never going to buy something at full price. Everyone wants to feel like they're getting a deal. So when I was coming to the US, I also didn't want to like compromise my values and undersell myself. So I was looking for ways that I could have a bit of a competitive advantage, even though like I'd never done hotels before and I didn't really have a lot of experience. Like I'd really only been in the business for about a year and a half when I landed my first hotel client. So
Okay.
I looked at how I buy. And I talk about this a lot. Like, however you buy is how you need to sell, because that is like intuitively who you are and what you can speak to the most
Okay.
authentically. So for me, I don't ever look at price. I look at what I'm getting for the price and I want to feel supported. And last thing I ever want to feel is nickeled and dimed. So I feel like when you throw things in like maintenance, I'm kind of like, well, the first thing that goes off in my head is like, well, shouldn't your flowers last a week? And we know as florists, like anything can happen. So yes, technically they should, but they might not. But what would
Yeah.
make me feel even more valued? Well, the fact that I don't even need to worry about maintenance. So instead of lowering my prices, I would go in and I would just say, and just so you know, we offer all our corporate clients like maintenance is on us. We don't pass that charge on to you, knowing that the rest of my market was passing on the charge. And so naturally, they feel like they're getting a savings. I feel like I have the flexibility to come in or not, because it's not like anyone's there with a stopwatch at the front door seeing if I'm coming in for maintenance. So probably for the first year, the maintenance was like on me. And the second year I had a team member do the maintenance. And by the third year, I had figured out how to install where I didn't even do maintenance. So I was technically getting paid for maintenance without even doing maintenance. And that's why, again, we have to give ourselves like the space to grow and evolve in our business, because a lot of these things, though you can learn them, a lot of us are trial by error people. We need to go live it out in real life to gain the experience. But I would say, like, you don't always have to compromise your pricing or be the cheapest person in the room. There's other ways that you can win the contracts. And for me, it was just providing more value, perceived value.
Yeah, I think that's the smartest way to do it, actually, because I feel like you're right. People don't like to be nickel and dimed. And again, I feel like with a lot of weddings, they do, because they've got a very strict budget. So when you start moving into this corporate arena and you're dealing more with that, I feel like the price is not as such a big concern. You know, they're used to spending a lot of money to get it done. And if it's one thing that's checked off, it's like, okay, great. So you do these contracts for what, 6 months at a time, or maybe a year contract. How do you go about like getting in there? Because I would imagine they've already been working with the florist already or previously or not. Like, so it's like weaving yourself into to maybe push someone else out. But, you know, how do you go about that? Or what is your best recommendation for what to say in those cases on, hey, why do you want to try my designs?
I'd say, like, on minimum, it's usually an annual contract. I like to be upfront that my first contract was 6 months, but it was given that I was like completely new. And again, this particular hotel, they had basically been working with a florist who essentially was just giving them like dead flowers all the time. So they weren't looking to just lock in a year with someone that they potentially wouldn't want to work with. So I would say, like, typically the absolute minimum is a year, because again, in the hospitality space, like they work in year sections. You know, they want to know like the whole year is covered. I want to go back to how I can add value to this question. Will you ask it one more time? Sorry, I had a thought and it ran away, and it's important.
Oh, what was the question? The question was, how do you get into a client if they're already working with someone else? Like,
Yeah.
for me, I feel like if I could see the beautiful, you know, something, and maybe I didn't love it, and I'm like, oh, they need an upcharge. So that might be my like opening line is like, hey, what's going on here? But like, really, at the end of the day, if they're locked into a contract, how do you weave yourself into that? And I guess in the timeline, maybe you're saying in September is when they're finalizing their budget. Maybe you reach out to them come June and say, hey, I would love to be in your hotel at this time. But like, how do you do that?
So the first thing I want to say, and this is either going to make people feel a little activated, or they're going to be like,
bring it on. You know, we need to let's stir this up. Come on now.
I think it's a female thing. I think like a man would never like feel like this. Like, what do I do if there's someone already in there? It's us as women trying to be nice and not trying to like steal from like fellow female entrepreneurs. And that's not what this is about. Like, I was behind the scenes today in one of my containers, and I was talking about how I met with one of my previous GMs, and they have a new florist because I didn't renew my contract in 2023. And I was like, this florist waited years to be their florist. Yeah. And so just because you get a no today doesn't mean it's not a forever no. It's just like a no right now. And it's actually a good sign when you go in and you speak to a GM and they already have a florist and they're already very loyal to their florist, because you want them to be very loyal to you. And it's just a matter of time. Like, things change. For me, for example, in 2023, I decided I no longer wanted to do operations. I was having florists from cities that I was in come into the Hotel Florist, and I was having conflict of interest because now we're trying to bid on the same, clientele. That doesn't make sense. So for me, I decided to leave my operations. It doesn't mean that I'm not coming back, but you never know what's happening with their current florist. You never know if they're going to be retiring, if they're selling, if they won't renew. It's not always a case of if they're bad and the hotel's unhappy. And if the hotel's happy, you never have a chance. Like, again, this is like a very basic story that we kind of tell ourselves sometimes because we want to like beat disappointment to the finish line. So I always encourage people who are bidding on hotels. The goal isn't to walk in and ask to speak to the GM and have them sign a contract before you walk out. Like, that doesn't deem you successful. The goal is to walk in, see where you can add value, understand what they currently have, speak with a GM, understand what they're happy with, maybe what they're not happy with. You also don't know, there's so many florists out there that don't have contracts, which is very sad for the
If
stability
they're
of,
on details, they do. If they're in details, we try to
there
give
you
them all
go.
the pointers.
But they
And
might
maybe
not.
we should, yeah, have you kind of tell us like these are all the best clauses that you should have if you're going into the luxury hotel market and like make sure you have this area covered, which is a
There's
great segue. Like, is there anything specific that florists should have in those contracts that is like the end all be all?
I feel like, ultimately there's always an opportunity for you, whether it's now or later, it's having a conversation. So picture every single opportunity as a seed, and your seeds harvest at different times. I can't
Yeah.
tell you how many florists during COVID actually went out and had relationships with their GMs. And the moment that budgets were back, were hired. And back then I was told, oh, GMs aren't hiring. And now I'm told, oh, they already have a florist. It's like, but they won't have a florist forever. Like, and I'm telling you, if it took you 6 months or 1 year, and in exchange, you got, 6 years of consistent income or a 7-figure guaranteed year, would it be worth it? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, when it comes to contracts, it is imperative. Like, you do not step foot in, deliver, or do anything with that hotel until you have a contract signed and a payment received. And I
Mm.
have had clients kind of be like, but they're so nice and they're going to do it. And then they go and install. And on like week 6, when they're literally floating this hotel, come in and take all their flowers out. And they're like, until you sign my contract, until you pay us, we will not continue installing. So again, this is a corporate client. This is a corporate business. This is not, oh, but she's so nice and I want to keep her mom happy. This is a business, and you are a business. And there's something about working with hotels in the corporate space that makes you take your business seriously, because you are identical. So when it comes to like must-have clauses in your contract, I mean, definitely I have a freebie. It's like the 5 must-have clauses. But in layman's terms, you basically want to make sure that you're the only one providing flowers in that hotel. Don't have another florist like casually dropping off flowers at the spa. This reflects on your brand, so that's not acceptable. If this hotel was featured in Architectural Digest, for example, on the front cover, that you're actually quoted, you actually have credit for that because your work is transforming their space. It is making it that lobby. There is an exclusivity clause in there. There is, it's very clearly outlines like how they can cancel you. They can't just wake up one day and decide they don't like purple flowers anymore. There is like a full disclosure. And then also like what happens when things like the pandemic hit or a hurricane hits? Like, how do you navigate that? Do they just not pay you because you couldn't install for 6 months? Like, what does that look like? So there is very important to have certain clauses in your contract. And, I do have a freebie on that where you can, and even a podcast episode where I like really dive into that.
Yeah.
Contracts, key, very important.
Yeah, we'll provide the link after this in our blog wrap up. So yeah, thank you, Cynthia, for asking where can I find this freebie? So we'll include it for you along with all of Franceska's contact information. What would you say that like in the wedding industry, in the wedding events, we really like encourage our florists to charge at least a 300% profit margin, which is cost times 4. But as we get into these larger markets or florists are working in bigger cities, usually we, it's all based on like a scale, but they might be upwards of 400 or 500% profit margin. Do you find that the profit, the amount that you can charge a corporate client like a luxury market is much higher, or is it less than the standard?
I think the wedding industry loves to have like their benchmarks. And I think the hospitality industry, the difference is, our luxury corporate clients, is understanding what their budget is. And then
Yep.
educating yourself on how to run your team more efficiently, how to buy more efficiently, how to provide the best margin for your client based on, if you know that 30% of whatever they're paying you is going directly to flowers, are you really spending your time with your wholesaler rep to make sure that these are the best flowers that you can get and this is the best price you can get? And you're trying to understand, if I buy 6 weeks in advance, could I maybe get even more flowers for this money? When I always like to think, when you're working with a corporate client, especially someone like a hotel, and they're guaranteed paying you every single month on the 5th of every month, like it's in your bank account, it's like, think of yourself as the treasurer, you know, like, how do I maximize these dollars? So in the beginning, my profit margins, I'm sure, were completely different than they were at the end. And I talk very transparent about this inside the Hotel Florist profit method. And you can at one point obtain like a 50% profit margin. I also talk about profit first and how this is so incredibly important in your business. I have a podcast episode on this. Like how do you go, when I started implementing it, I was like 1% profit. How do you go from 1% to 20%? You know, and it's like, these things are important, but I feel like when we get tied up in the has to be, you know, 3 times or has to be a 4 times, we lose sight on the other things that matter to us. Like for me, what matters, like, well, who's paying for the design fee and who's paying for this and who's, you know, and I started implementing actually a 20%, 25% fee on everything I was doing because, and I broke it down on like what it actually supported. I talk about this inside Pedals to Profit. Like, I think pricing really at the end of the day, we need to normalize the fact that everyone's business is different. Everyone's like desires, what they want their business to give them is different. And even though we can have these benchmarks, they need to fluctuate. Just like when you go to the wholesaler, you know, years ago, we could have bought a rose at 36 cents. Now we're like lucky if we get it at $1. Like it fluctuates. And I think we need to be able to feel that in our own business and know when we need to increase our prices and also not like lose business just because we're trying to fit into like a ratio.
Yeah, I would highly agree with all of that. But I feel like you should have at least an idea of where you need to go, because if you sell them like the world on this and you're not making any money on it, but you know, but maybe you need to check your suppliers and get a better price on, you know, the product that you're buying and your whole network of people who are in your corner who are helping you do your business, right? What is the typical standard? So you said they paid you on the 5th of every month. Is that standard? Or because I found that a lot of corporate clients like to do 30, 60, 90 days. And I think that's where a lot of florists might hurt themselves in this regard if their cash flow gets really out of sync because they're waiting for Peter to pay and then they're stealing from Paul, or what's going on here. So is there a certain standard, or it just depends on the hotel chain and, you know, how they pay their accounts payable?
Yeah, I want to go back and make sure we have the last question finalized. So I would say like if you have to have like a bottom line number, I would say like minimum like 30% of whatever their budget is, it's going to go to flowers. You decide what the other 70% is going to. But I would say like that's the minimum. And again, how I started this whole conversation, it's like you need to ask them what the budget is. And if you feel like you cannot deliver what they're asking for, like there's been plenty of times like Tiffany & Co. has like dropped you know, a mood board in my inbox saying, we want this and we only want to pay this per arrangement. I'm like, first of all, lilacs aren't in season. Second of all, there's no way I can meet this budget. Third of all, are you happy if I cluster, you know, lavender stock and we call it a day? So you have to be able to be the expert in your business, which you already are, but it's understanding their budget. Their budget is number one versus like your pricing. Then you decide from there if you can fulfill their budget, if you can meet their expectation, because this is the difference with corporate clients. They're typically telling you what they expect for the price they want to pay for it. Then you decide how that works for you. And if it doesn't work for you, then you let them know, you educate them, and then you find a middle ground where it will work. The second question, sorry, Corrine.
Oh, well, I guess on the 30, 60, 90 days,
Yeah.
like, because this is like such a big thing with corporate, you know, they're like, oh, it's checks in the mail.
All corporate clients try to do this. Again, I always say, like, you are the entrepreneur, you're the leader in your business. You get to educate people on how they get to work with you. And that didn't work for me. I don't like waiting 30 or 60 days. So I would just tell people up front, like, you know, the way that we operate is that all payments, it even got to the point where I was annoyed to cash checks. So this is what I would do. I would just tell the hotel, like, moving forward, starting in Q2, starting in May, we are no longer accepting payments via check. You know, instead, we are setting up ACH payments. So it got to the point where literally just ACH payments were drawn from their account. So I knew on the 5th of every month, and I suggested the first Friday, even in that first negotiation for the 6-month contract. Again, this girl has never done hotel contracts, but I was like, I am not going to float 4 weeks worth of installs with this client. And what if they don't pay? Like, that was a fear. So I told them up front, I said, the way that we operate is that we take payment for the month on the first Friday of the month. And they're like, okay. like I just told them. And then it came to a point because I went through 3 sets of owners. The second set of owners were like, well, that doesn't really work for us, but we can pay you on the 5th of every month. And I'm like, that's perfect. And then I came back and said, well, we don't accept payments via check anymore. So now we've set up an ACH, which for anyone listening, if you don't know what that means, it's essentially like agreeing that on the 5th of every month, my company will withdraw, let's say $10,000 from the hotel company, and it goes into our bank account. So there is no more invoices. There is no more receipts, like all of that set up automatically. Because again, I'm always looking for ways that I can automize things and scale things that don't require me. We live in the most incredible day and age where we have so much automation, and
Yeah, for
now we
sure.
have AI that literally it saves so much time. So that's how I navigated the whole 30, 60, 90. I just wasn't available for it. And I just educated people on how they could work with us.
Yeah, I think it's pretty incredible that you were negotiating a contract in Texas when you were in Dubai. So let's dig into more of that. Like, how can we be more global to all the florists out there that are like, hey, I want to be able to plan this event or do this? Like, how did you sell to someone when you were so far away?
Yeah, I would say like number one, because I've actually had a lot of people come into my world and they're like, I'm moving from here and I'm going here. So once I get
Yeah.
established, then I can. I'm like, no, you can do it now. We live in this incredible time, whether we like it or not, that you can literally pretend to be whoever you want to be on social media. And I don't mean that in like a very deceitful way. I mean that in the fact that if like I was in Dubai and I know I'm moving to Houston and I'm no longer looking for business in Dubai, I'm going to put inside my like Instagram bio, like, serving, hotels worldwide based in Dubai and Houston. Nobody is like, where's your address? Can I come and like make sure you live
Yeah.
in Houston? No, nobody's doing that. So it's like, I need to make sure that when a potential client was landing on my like Instagram or landing on my website, it spoke to them. So I think number one key is if you know you want to be in multiple markets, make sure that those clients in multiple markets feel seen, whether that's like in how you're marketing, on your social media, on your website. And then I just like literally reached out to them. I also look whenever I'm in markets, do I know someone in this market? Do I know someone who could make an introduction for me? Do I know someone who could make this cold call a little warmer, who could vouch for me? Literally, I landed the artist in residency at the Fairmont Dallas because I had worked at that hotel 7 years prior.
Mm.
And I literally made an appointment with director of operations and I walked in. I was visiting my mom at the time. I literally drove up 1 hour, valeted my car, walked in, had this meeting with the director of ops. And I said, you have this really empty glass box just sitting here. Nothing's happening. How did I know that? Because I used to work there. And you know what? Hotels are a little archaic. They're kind of slow to make change. And I said, wouldn't it be amazing if we put like a flower shop in there and you also do this artist in residency program? And so like I could come in and activate the space and we could make it a PR thing and a marketing thing. And then I like sold them on the idea. It was literally a 30-minute meeting. So it's never letting, I'm a huge advocate of never letting where you are right now define where it is you want to go. I always say, like, think about your higher self. Where do you want to be in 2 months, 6 months, 12 months from now? And what do you need to do today to that version of you is going to thank you for? So whether it's sending out the email, whether it's starting to change up your messaging, and also giving yourself the permission to grow and evolve, like as a human, as a business. You don't have to do the same thing in the same place like for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I love that. And I love like I'm an action girl, so I take action on my ideas a little more than I think my team would like because they're always like, this is not what we're doing. So but I love that and I love the word activate. You've used it a few times, once for it to be positive and once for it to be negative. So I love it was like activating something. But can you elaborate on some of the principles you outline in your best-selling book, Hotel Florist Profit Method? And can we buy this on Amazon? Like, where
You can
can
buy
we
this
find
you can buy this on Amazon.
it? Good.
I literally wanted to take our signature program that I think at this point to date has generated over like 6 million and say, how can I put this in like a book form where someone who I call it the Cliff Notes version. So it's not the same like impact that you would get in a year-long coaching container, but it is the Cliff Notes version. So you can buy this on Amazon and it essentially walks you through like, how do I pitch? how do I land? How do I design for this hotel? And then how do like I automate it? How do I scale it? Like when do I start bringing people in? What do I need to look for in a team? And it really is meant to like take your hand and walk you through the whole process of pitching, landing, and automating hotel partnerships.
Awesome. We'll put that link in our blog. Also, you do coaching. So you do one-on-one coaching with
Yeah.
florists just to
Yeah.
like have them incorporate this methodology into their business.
I'd say like my private coaching, like someone who is a great candidate for private coaching, they have already established like, multiple six, seven figures in their business, and they're dealing with challenges. So challenges with their team, challenges around boundaries, challenges around landing new contracts or scaling what they already have. We have this idea that once we get to this goal we have, whether it's your first 6-figure year, your first multiple 6-figure year, your first 7-figure year, that one client, that we think like, oh, then we can breathe, then we can just like wipe our hands and we're good. But the fact of the matter is that entrepreneurship is a journey, and there's always another level. And I'm not the biggest fan of this like more money, more problems kind of vibe, but there is something to be said by being like a solo entrepreneur going for your 6 figures versus, a 7-figure entrepreneur who is struggling with potentially replacing their 10-person team, and having really high profile clients that would make or break their business. So I find that the people that come into private mentorship aren't people that need to know, how do I do this? The people that want to know, how do I do this? They're inside like the Hotel Florist Profit Method. They're inside the weekly coaching calls, and they're getting supported, even if it's not for myself, from previous graduates who are also hotel florists that have done this and can support them as well. But they're in this place where they're like, I want to feel seen. I want to like, what did you do when this happened? Like, how did you walk through this? And it's like, it's just feeling like a sounding board, because there is a time in our life where, our partners don't understand what we're going through. We can't really speak obviously to our team about this, and we feel quite alone. And a lot of times we like self-isolate. And this is where I find that we become the cog in our wheel, versus when we have a mentor, someone who can show us our gold, because a lot of times we're too close to that gold, and remind us who we are and remind us what's on the other side of fear. This is where I find that clients really catapult into their next level.
Yeah, I think I have a lot of friends who lean into their coaching and different mentors. I'm yet to do it. Like I'm one that is just kind of like, I'll consult with my entrepreneur friends about a lot of things, but I've never dived into like almost like a business therapist. Like, help me figure this out, Franceska.
Love
Um,
that.
I think it's really valuable. And if you have the time and the resources to put into this, I think it's like I've seen people like change their whole business in a matter of a few months. And I think that's exactly what you're trying to inspire from like doing these more hotel accounts, because unlike a wedding or a special event, that date comes and goes, and then you're out hunting for the next, you're doing bridal shows. But if you can secure some of these larger venues as regular repeat business, I think that that is going to make the difference in like your lifestyle and what you're able to do and how you like grow your team. Because if you have a certain set of team members that can, help you get this going or booming. Over this last year, especially since COVID, I've seen a number of our florists spin out second and even third brands where they're doing exactly this. So I do think that there's a lot of value to what you're saying, and like figure out how exactly you want to approach that. And then it's all about that relationship building, is what I'm
1,000,000%.
taking.
And like, you're going to do it anyway. I think that when it comes to coaching and mentorship, you just collapse time. So, for example, it took me 4 years to finally get things going that I teach clients to do in a 1 quarter. And,
Yeah.
time is money. And I'm a huge advocate of mentorship and coaching because I've invested in myself. And
Mhm.
I was not a fan of this. Like up until 2020, I believe that if you needed to hire a coach or a mentor, then you didn't need to be an entrepreneur because you clearly didn't know what you were doing. And
Yeah.
then in 2020, when I started building the Hotel Florist and I started getting our first round of founding members in, I realized that what they were struggling with, I was really struggling with, and I didn't really feel like I could help them. The whole point of a coach and a mentor is someone who is, even if it's 20 steps ahead of you, they can tell you like, hey, be careful, there's a hole in the road, or the bridge is out, or, they're able to guide you. And at that point, I felt like I was almost just 2 feet, like 2 steps away. And that's when I really started, investing in myself. And today I've spent probably almost $100,000 in my coaching and my mentorship of myself, but it has made me a better leader. It has made me a better business owner. It has made me a better coach and mentor. So I'm passionate about what I do because I actually do it for myself first. And I think that's so incredibly important that, it's very hard for us to be advocates for something that we're not actually practicing. But the moment that I was able to, especially, just heal a lot of childhood trauma that I had, that I was finding that I was always like constantly activated by certain things, and being able to better support my clients because of the investments I made into myself, it makes their investment, like, I feel like, so much more worthwhile. So that is why I'm so passionate about it.
Yeah, takes those dollars further for
Yeah.
sure when you have that extra knowledge.
Invest for yourself. I mean, I couldn't think of a better return on investment, honestly.
Yeah, we have a question from Alejandro. Hi, Alejandro. Would it be better to approach hotel prospects in person or via email? Like, do you feel
Or
like there's
everyone wants to be a keyboard warrior, and I'm telling you, 90% of those emails don't ever get read. So again, like, I have a free masterclass on like exactly how to do this, because I get that hotels can be very intimidating, especially luxury hotels, and especially for some of us who like didn't really have that experience and maybe still haven't given that experience to ourselves today. You
Mhm.
can literally go in and have a cup of coffee or meet a friend for lunch or become a guest in the hotel. So you don't feel like I'm just walking in and I'm trying to sell myself. Like, I feel like that's too much pressure on your nervous system. Like, very few people can pull that off. But if you can go in and you can sit and you can be in the space and you can actually exchange dollars and feel like, okay, I've been here for 45 minutes. I kind of get what's going on. I know who the guests are. This is obviously, I call it fun business development. Now I have something to speak to, and now I can go and speak to the general manager and talk about how I was just eating in the restaurant. Now all of a sudden you have a story. But the thing is like, this is a people business, and this GM might not remember who you are or what your company is called, but they will remember how you make them feel. And this, I want to say, is like the edge on the competition, because majority of people are either sitting behind a computer or they're picking up the phone, and it just doesn't have the same impact.
Yeah. Thank you. I think that's great. So there was a question that we had, and as an international floral designer, and I've experienced this just traveling this last year, I've been to a few countries, but the cultural differences are pretty significant. And so I feel like different countries or different businesses want to be spoken to in different ways. Can you speak to that at all, or what you've experienced over the course of your career?
Yeah, I would say it's a lot less about brand and it's a lot more about where you're based. So for example, let's take Four Seasons, right? If you go into Four Seasons, Georges Cinq in Paris, we know they have a multi-million-dollar flower budget per year. We know Jeff Latham, even though he never steps foot in that hotel maybe once or twice a year, they have like a multi-million-dollar budget. And it is, if you go to any type of what do I do in Paris, it is always the top 5 things to do in Paris. Go to the Georges Cinq, go see the flowers. Now let's take Four Seasons Dubai. Four Seasons Dubai is saying, oh, well, if you want to be inside Four Seasons, then you know what? You can just provide flowers for us for free, because, all the sheikhs and the sheikhas are going to see your work. So this is actually free advertising for you. Or we can take Four Seasons in Houston, Texas, and they're like, you know what? We don't really want to do flowers. We do coffee table books, and we don't really rely on flowers for our average daily rate. We installed white marble, and we have the Four Seasons logo, so that we are able to hold our rates that way. So it's not specific. It's not always specifically brand related. Even though I know that kind of contradicts a little bit what I started at the beginning saying, most brands have brand standards. What's really important is the ownership and the cultural differences. And I feel like if you're in a market where that, for example, I didn't necessarily go after hotels in Dubai, because just using Dubai as an example, because they really do believe in like getting things for free or getting things super cheap. And I knew that wasn't really going to set me up for success. But I did know there was an opportunity in Houston, Texas that was close to 6 figures a year. So that's the opportunity I went after. It's having the knowledge of your own city, of your own culture, and knowing how to maximize that. And I invite anyone, if you do have a question about this, I'm more than happy to talk about it. Just send me a DM on Instagram and I can elaborate further.
Yeah. So what are some common misconceptions or challenges florists face when establishing like partnerships with luxury hotels?
I'd say giving away free flowers.
Yeah.
Giving away free flowers, sending an email, um, and also just deciding that they already have a florist so that they don't have an opportunity. And, again, like they just might have a florist today, but you don't know anything. You don't know if that florist even has a contract. And I have worked with hotels that had a florist, but didn't have a contract in place and they switched. And which is again why you really should have a contract.
Do a lot of these installations allow you to put your business card out for business, or you're not looking for that retail type of business at these events, or would you say it
Start
just depends on the
landing
market?
It depends what kind of setup you have. If you are a retail business and you want more retail business, potentially, but
Mm,
once you start dabbling in corporate accounts, there's so much more money to be made in less amount of time than worrying about one-off daily deliveries.
I
So what
agree.
I did is that, and I was actually inspired by the Corinthia London, who I worked with for a while, literally to just put out a little plaque. The little plaque has the hotel's logo on it, has my logo on it, and it tells a story about the flowers, about the installation this year.
Yeah.
Sorry, this week. And I did the same thing for Fairmont, and people love that because they love to learn. They love to know. I mean, how many times have you seen guests go up and just like rub flowers to even see if they're real?
Yeah.
Or what kind of flowers are these? I've never seen these before. Being able to create more value to your install, which is also a very subtle marketing hack where you can also encourage people to like tag us, or people aren't stupid in this day and age. Like they know how to record an Instagram story and they know how to tag people. So it could literally just be, find us on Instagram, or it could just literally be your brand name, like the Hotel Florist, and then people just type that in Instagram and boom, they find you. So I don't feel like marketing has to be that direct where it's like, here's my business card. It can
Yeah.
literally be like, hi, the main purpose of this is to tell a story about this install, and if you want to learn more, then here's how you could find us.
Yeah, I think that is especially true in this like evolving, I guess emerging trends, because we're all on the social media. So if you can incorporate that into your installation and make it fun or interactive for the guests and they're tagging you in the hotel or something, I feel like that's amazing. Is there anything that you see in the hospitality industry that's you've seen as like an upcoming trend that we can maybe
Yes,
okay.
garden gardens are, I feel like, give it 5 years. There's a big shift happening right now, especially as we're becoming more conscious, like sustainability, our use of plastic. A lot of countries are like banning single-use plastic. Hotels are not sustainable really at all. They're doing their best that they can, but most of it's for marketing purposes. But that's why, again, like if you're a flower farmer, like being authentically local, being able to be a florist inside a hotel and they can put up a little plaque saying how they source locally is a huge value add to their pillar of sustainability. But I
Yeah.
do feel like as we are becoming more conscious as a collective, one of the trends we're going to start seeing is not necessarily landscaping, but more so garden. So this whole concept of like, field to table, a kitchen garden. And Fairmont, to be honest, jumped on this bandwagon like 10, 15 years ago. But essentially, you're going to start seeing a lot more new builds with outdoor spaces. And in those outdoor spaces, they are putting in actual gardens. So like with, vegetables and herbs. And
Yeah.
they're going to need florists or horticultural specialists or gardeners or landscape architects to be able to help them design, facilitate, maintain, and harvest these outdoor spaces. So I would say that is going to be a rising trend in probably the next 5 years.
Yeah, I love that. Do you see that there's a lot of in luxury hotels and a florist that's already in like in there, like there's a florist in-house, like an in-house florist, or most luxury places without like an in-house florist? Because I know at like what the Waldorf Astoria or something, there's like an indoor florist that services all of their accounts there.
It depends on, I'm going to go back to cultures. It depends on the market. So I would say, like, for example, in Asia, for example, getting really specific, like Japan, getting really specific, Tokyo, majority of their five-star hotels actually have flower shops that are built in that have in-house florists. I don't know their exact business setup. I want to say based on like just what I witnessed, maybe 50% of them are like in-house, meaning that they're, the hotel pays them and they manage this flower shop. And I would say probably the other 50%, it's a separate business, and they have an agreement with the hotel, and they're managing this flower shop. I would say this is also very common in a city like London. For example, Flower Box recently went into the Corinthia, London. Before that, it was by appointment only. They're their own separate businesses, but they're getting paid by the hotel. They're activating that space. In the US, it's not as common. And even when I was in Australia, like a lot of hotels, they might have the florist workshop studio behind the scenes, like back of the house, but you won't necessarily see it front of the house. That means that they still have the flexibility to hire anyone they please. And then that florist has access to the back of house, florist studio. But I would say it really depends on the country you're in, on the city you're in. It's a lot less common than having a hotel hire a outside florist, but still calling them in-house. They just might not have a physical in-house presence.
Okay. Well, that's amazing. So what do you envision for the Hotel Florist future? Is there anything that you have in the works, or anything you can share with us?
Oh my gosh, we have so much in the works. I'll never forget in 2019, sitting at my desk thinking, how amazing would it be that I could create like a booking.com for like florists and hotels to find each other. And at the time, it just felt so incredibly like remote, as if I said, I can't wait to live on Mars tomorrow. Like, it made no sense. Now that we have created a brand that has literally educated over like hundreds of florists, we're now certifying florists on how to be hotel florists. We're now actually starting to work with hotels on building brand standards for their specific brand. I would say the things that are in the works for us at the Hotel Florist is having that platform where we're really connecting florists and hotels. And also we're coming out with a new app very, very soon. So those are two very exciting things that we're working on.
Well, that's fun. I love it. So please do keep us informed.
I will.
To round out this whole interview, because we've been talking for an hour, so thank you, Franceska. It's gone by so quickly. We do this fun thing where it's called rapid fire questions. So at the end of the year, we're probably going to do a compilation of all of this and put all of the people together with different questions. But are you ready to do the rapid fire? And if you guys have any other questions for Franceska, please feel free to either email us or drop her a line or hit her up on Instagram. I'm sure she'll get right back to you. So what is your favorite word in another language?
Cocoette. It means peanut in French.
Oh, that's good. I love it. I like almonds. No. What is your drink of choice?
Red wine.
Okay. What is your favorite flower?
Stock.
Ah, that's the first time I've heard someone say that, actually. Although I do love it. Summer, winter, spring, or fall?
Summer.
Gotcha. Morning or evening?
Morning.
Are you more of a thinker or a doer?
Oh, a doer.
Yeah, you would like to activate. No.
Yeah.
I think that takes two. The place you most want to travel that you have not been to yet?
Oh, you know what? I'm gonna say Emerald Islands off the coast of Panama. I think that's where they are.
Okay, that's good. There is an event coming up in Panama, the gateway to the America's Cup, so you might need to go there. What's for dinner tonight?
Italian.
Okay, good. What is your go-to karaoke song?
I don't sing karaoke.
No?
No,
okay.
not.
All right. Do you have a hidden talent?
Oh my gosh, do I have a hidden talent? I don't know why, but I want to say I'm double jointed in my knees, but that's really not a hidden talent.
What is your favorite dance move? And can you show us it here?
No, I would say that I would say I danced ballet for 14 years.
Oh, that's good. You could do a
Ballerina.
pirouette.
Yeah.
What would be your superpower?
Reading people's minds.
I like it. Yeah, that's good. So someone has a final question. Do you deal with real flowers only, or do you have faux flowers in your installations?
Generally speaking, it's real flowers. But again, that was like company preference, and that's how I would educate people. Like, we only specialize in fresh cut or preserved. I do think that there is a market for faux flowers, and especially around COVID and especially around the holidays, I would do a lot more preserved than fresh cut because it would give me like 100% profit margin. And I would also buy flowers that I knew would dry out that I could later utilize. So I think, there's a market for both. It's just, how do you want to differentiate yourself in the market? Because how I speak about fresh cut would be completely different than how I would speak about faux.
Yeah. A few years ago at the SAF Congressional Action Days, we were staying at the Ritz-Carlton, Pentagon City, and they had the most gorgeous bouquet of pink roses. And I looked at this and I didn't get close to it, but after a few days, I think we were there close to a week. I was like, something's going on. And they were all those freeze dried. I had never seen them, but they smelled glorious. I was like, they're putting us all out of business by using these preserved flowers. I expect more from you, Ritz-Carlton. You didn't need to be doing this, but they did look phenomenal. And I imagine that if you can get that installed, you'd probably be happy. And it's very low maintenance. You just have to dust them from time to time.
And it depends on the owner. Maybe the owner's saying we only want quarterly. Anytime I put preserved in, though, like, I'm not looking to put myself out of a job. Like, you can't really tell. We'd pull it out after a week. It would just be more so where I would cut down on like the fresh cut that I would buy.
Yeah. Well, thank you for this. We are going to do an edit on this and then send it to everybody who registered. We're also going to post it on our website. So thank you, Franceska, for spending this time with us. I learned a lot. I learned some things I'm going to do and not do, and all the ways I'm going to service the local Daytona Beach hotels here with more flowers, which they have never wanted. So my market is not a fresh flower market, but I know that there are thousands of them out there.
Hotels can change their mind until they do.
I know.
Keeping them on the back burner.
But that, not to say some really high-end law firms around here wouldn't love a weekly install. So don't be too close-minded on the ways that you can enhance your business. Thank you, Franceska, for sharing all these great tips and tricks with us. And thank you guys for tuning in. Next month, we are having the Carlos and Rafi, or Rafi and Carlos from Petal Productions, join us for our May masterclass. And you guys won't want to miss it. It's going to be all on doing large over-the-top installations. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And thank you, Franceska, again.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for joining.
All right. Bye, guys. Thank you so much.